right, what's blooming? So I wanted to introduce the Rudbeckia, which is black-eyed Susan. We've seen a lot, at least I have, near the back gate this year, and there's still some out there. There's been a lot blooming this year. They are not annuals, but biennials. So the seed that drops takes 2 years to germinate, which I didn't realize until I looked into it. And so they go through a cycle, and they don't always bloom the same volume every year, right? So I think they're beautiful, and I appreciate they just pop up along the sides of the road, so they're beautiful. Let's see, one more before we get to that. Mountain mint, Pincanthium, I think. When I first saw this, when I moved up here, it looked like somebody had gone along with a can of white spray paint and just sort of topped off all of these plants that are just off the road. And they fascinate me. I had some in my backyard that in pots this year, and I had bees. I meant to put it in. I'll show it to you one day. That they slept upside down underneath the leaves of this plant. They were the cutest things. They would even, they were there for weeks. They would let me touch them, these bumblebees and they'd kind of like pick a leaf that was curved like a little hammock, and they would hang out upside down at night. I always wondered, where do the bees sleep? Well, now I know at least where some of them sleep. And this is a fairly deer-resistant plant, so you do see it on the roadsides, and it's great in the garden, and you can find it at native plant nurseries. And then, of course, the stilt grass. Okay, so everybody's like, oh, here we go with the stilt grass again. But I feel like we can't just ignore it. It's out there. It has just taken off, right? I mean, anybody who's been trying to deal with it realizes that it appears to be unstoppable, but let's not forget it is number 2 on the Georgia Forest Trees Commission list of harmful plants. It does harm the ecosystem. So here with the pull-up challenge, right? Here were my hopes and dreams for the pull-up challenge. This is how it was envisioned to be, right? Easy peasy. I mean, we were gonna power right through it. This is kind of how I thought it might go. Here's how it has kind of gone. This is what feels like more how it has gone through the course of and those of us who've tried to leave group events realize that it has not really gone all that. So I wanted to ask, who, and don't be embarrassed, who has done anything with stilt grass at home? Even if I know nobody's attended community events, but who's doing something? All right, I appreciate that. I really do, because there are no big problems. There are only lots of little problems, and in this case, there are lots and lots and lots and lots of little problems out there. So if you did anything to address this in whatever small way, thank you. I wanted to encourage you, as folks have encouraged me, because there have been times when personally, I feel like, just throwing up your hands and saying, forget it. I'm going to put blinders on and pretend like it's not there. But remember that the goal this year, we still have a little time. The goal is to keep it from dropping seed. It is an annual grass. So it hasn't set seed yet. You still have time to kill it in whatever way works for you. Don't let it make seed if you can help it, right? Someone last night, the lady who came to pick up the gentleman who were at my house that my husband brought home unexpectedly because they were incapable of driving themselves home. So the lady who came to get them, this was good for me. So she said she had blown leaves in her yard and had piled them in the area where the stilt grass was the worst. And it had not come up this year because a 6-inch layer of mulch will keep it from coming up. So using the leaves as in your favor. My long-term question is, well, nothing else is going to come up either. So, but anyway, it prevents it from spreading, right? And so, it is one way to do it, is to put mulch on it. Yes, Mary?
Are you allowed to, like we have a lot in our cul-de-sac, are you allowed allowed to weed there?
I have.
Yes. Well, I say yes. You mean it's a common property? Yes. Yes. I mean, would anybody feel differently that a cul-de-sac, the interior area of a cul-de-sac should not be weeded? I feel like that's fair game. Yes. Thank you for doing that.
I pulled some up this week, and the biggest problem I had was the fear of grabbing a bin full of copperhead.
True. I mean, I will say this. I do wear gloves, and I've never seen a snake. I have been scared to death, though, because I stepped on a stick on one end of a long stick, and then the other end of the stick moved, and I didn't know that that's what it was at first, so that can be very alarming. I think the wildlife don't like it. I don't know. Has anybody ever seen snakes in it? I don't see life in it at all. It doesn't. I mean, you'll see a cricket, or every now and then, or so there are some biting insects. But I agree. So be careful. Yes, Todd.
If you're gonna string trim it, like when's that cutoff date in August? Like mid-August?
Mid-August. Trim it low. I mean, as James always tells me, throw dirt, right? So the goal is you don't want it to grow back, because you're not killing the roots when you do that, but you don't want it to have time to regenerate enough to make seed.
It has such a shallow root system to it. If you take the weed eater on an angle to the ground, most of the time it would just rip it up. It won't even worry about cutting the grass off. It will literally just pull it up out of the ground, because that root system just sits right on top of the ground. It does not go down into the dirt at all.
And that's the reason why it's so invasive, and that it keeps other flowers and plants from growing, because it just
Right on the
it's
top
right
surface.
on the top surface and just covers it with and blocks it out.
Nasty stuff. Okay, Artie Allen, our new liaison to the board, and he has. I'm sorry, Artie. Should here we go, and then I'll move straight to James.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be your new liaison. When Glenn Harris was made president, he could no longer be your liaison, so he asked me to take this on, and I'm excited about it. So my role is to simply meet with you monthly and just let you know what your board and staff is working on, just give you an update on projects. And then I go back to the board and I give the board an update on what you're working on. So the first thing I want to talk about is the sluice gate. As you know, that the gearbox, 50-year-old gearbox, was broken. So there's a manufacturing operation in Texas that is fabricating a new gearbox. And it's going to be more robust, meaning simply that it'll be able to apply more torque so that hopefully the sluice gate will open. We're not sure when that's going to show up. It could be 2 weeks, it could be 4 weeks, but it's sometime fairly soon. And what will happen is if it does open, which we think it will, and keep in mind the contractor that was here for a week, when they moved all the silt away, they did a visual inspection, and they didn't see any reason why it shouldn't open, okay? So assuming that it opens, that contractor will come back for a week, and then they'll place a grill or a grate over it so that when the sluice gate is open and water goes through, that it keeps debris from getting into the pipe. That's what's supposed to happen. I think that'll happen. Once that's done, then we can begin dredging the lake. And the first location, I believe, that we will dredge will be the Goose Island between Sally Dawson and the beach. So if all goes well, we'll have that done by the end of the year. No promises. Financial status of BTCI, we're healthy. Last financial report I looked at, we had $3.5 million in the bank. Now that's all committed money. Most of it is committed. The operating money will pay payroll and operations through the end of the year, and the capital is virtually all committed. We've got $250,000 of uncommitted capital and $90,000 of uncommitted operating funds. So financially we're healthy. And we've got a lot of liabilities. We've got the roads, we've got the lake, we've got a lot of things that need to be done that we are not funded to do. And we'll be taking a look at that this fall when we work on the budget. That's probably the most important thing we have to do between now and the end of the year. Website, we're almost there. The Communications Committee has been working hard. They've been meeting every Friday for the last month. It looks really good, it's fast, it's functional, and what we're simply trying to do is make sure we get all the bugs worked out. The committee told Chris we do not want to launch until we're pretty sure that everything is working right. We're now beta testing. We've got people in the community who are not web designers that are testing this to make sure that you can get reservations at the tavern on the website. You can reserve a tea time. You can reserve pickleball or tennis, all on the website. I think you're going to really like it. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock here, meet the candidates. If you haven't decided who you're going to vote for, please come. It's very informative. The last thing is next Friday and Saturday is going to be the second annual Jammin' for Joy House Pickleball Tournament. Last year it was a one-day event, and there were 70 people who registered to play pickleball. This year it's 2 days, and there's 180 players. Yeah. And the reason why I want to mention that is because if you've got something to do here Friday or Saturday, you're going to have a hard time finding a parking place. So if you've got a meeting plan, you may want to consider trying to schedule that someplace else. But that's pretty exciting.
I know you have all these tournaments, but are we ever invited to come and watch?
Absolutely, you can come and watch. Yes, please.
We're invited, and I maybe there's not room for us to view.
Yeah, absolutely come and watch. I think Friday it starts at 9, it goes to I think 8 o'clock at night. And Saturday it'll be done I think around 5 o'clock. Please come. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Move to the side here. Good morning, y'all. Morning. See if we can get all this to work this morning. All right, so erosion control, and basically it's just some ideas that you can put into practice as a homeowner. So what is erosion? Erosion is going to be the detachment or the movement of soil basically every time it rains. You saw it last night. Heavy rain, if it is uncovered, raw soil, bare soil, you start watching that soil go down the hillsides, down your backyard, down your driveway. It can be moved by water, wind, ice. As we just said, raindrops, it hits that uncovered soil, it dislodges that soil, and the splash, the erosion, then ends up going downhill. So the problem, the US EPA has declared that sediment contamination of our surface waterways is the biggest threat to our nation's water resources. Well, we have a large water resource here, we know. And of course that water resource sits at the bottom of all of our hills. So what can we help to do? And of course, looking back at what the US EPA says is the problem with it. Fertilizers, pesticides, other contaminants which get attached to that soil, when they get washed downhill, they carry into our streams and our lakes. Come on. There we go. All right, so water that is loaded with sediments, why is that an issue for us? A reduced drainage capacity, the increase of flooding, a decrease in aquatic organisms and the populations, decreased recreational fishing, increased expenditures for our water department, trying to keep that water clean and trying to keep the equipment clean that pumps that water, and of course that decrease in the recreational value of our lakes and streams. And of course, the one that we've been looking at through Lake and Wildlife has been with our silt dams. Those have helped a tremendous amount since we've been getting those back up and running. And what we see a lot, of course, through the runoff is the silt buildup in our creeks. You can go by and you'll see where Building and Grounds has come through and they've helped to clean out the one most visibly down by Goose Island. You'll see them end up packing that up on the edge of the bank down there for a while. They'll let it dry out, they'll spread it, and then of course reseed it with grass. But you can see the amount of silt that does come downhill. There we go. All right, so what can we help to do to slow erosion? And you can look at this for things that you can do on your own property. Create a berm, basically a hill. Anything that slows that water, that gives the items in that water a chance to settle, is what's keeping that from just going all the way downhill. A berm, you can have, not too sure what the muddy one is, any sort of ground cover, and of course rocks, riprap, which if you've done any digging in your yard, there's a lot of those up here.
That X is no bare soil. That's what that's supposed to represent.
Ah.
Cover the ground. Don't have bare soil. Sorry.
Nope, that's all right. All right, so of course, like we just said, a berm, rounded, raised structure, slow that runoff. Leaves every fall. The battle that I have in my backyard, trying to move them down the hill. I've just gotten to where I stack them. We live along the lakeside. There's now a nice long line of leaves that goes all the way across the bottom of the property. Rocks, logs. If you have anything that's fallen in your yard, well, what do I do with it? I've got a nice line of those going across the front of the leaves. It just helps to slow everything down. So here's kind of the idea, and this comes from actually the US EPA. You have where the water is going to fall, being that water field. A compost berm, that's what I have for leaves in the backyard. You have where that rain hits, where everything starts to run downhill. Layers of compost, a secondary berm or a secondary structure to help slow that water up. Again, anytime you can slow the water, everything that's in that water has a chance to settle. And it keeps it from settling in your streams, in your lakes, or on your driveway, any place else that you have to go dig it out or move it out of. All right, here's one of the pictures from Bentry, and you can see that nice line of rocks, piles of leaves. Oh my God, it's all sitting there. Well, it also has a job. It keeps all that water from running downhill. You can use it to divert water. You can use it to slow down water. Keep it off the sides of your house, your buildings. There we go. Same idea. What do I do with all these rocks? I was trying to plant plants and I kept digging them up. All right. Make a nice little line somewhere in your yard where that water is going downhill. You can do the same thing with brush. Got tree limbs that keep falling? Start stacking them. The leaves get caught in them. It starts to create that little natural boundary that just kind of keeps everything from washing downhill. Okay. When you start seeing the rocks stacked across the sides of the road, a lot of times they'll refer to that as a bioswale. You're using natural objects, again, to slow down that water flow. Along the sides of the roads, they can be interconnected. What does it help? It helps to treat stormwater by slowing it down. It allows that vegetation to grow. That vegetation grows, that vegetation is holding that soil in place. As it says, it's a check dam. It's going to slow that water line to keep it from going downhill too quickly. It's not washing your topsoil away. If it slows it down, it's giving your ground a chance to absorb that water. So your ground covers, and y'all know this, mulch it. Gravel works. Anything that's going to keep that water from hitting bare ground. Compost, leaves, small branches, native grasses and plants. There we go. Anything that's going to control that rain flow. It's going to slow it, it's going to help disperse the water, and it's going to encourage that plant growth. So driveways, we've all got them. One side, you got mulch holding it in place. Other side, you've got gravel holding it in place. Anything that slows that water down. Plus that initial impact, that rain last night, heavy, fast, a whole lot of it came down in a short amount of time. Water's not hitting the ground, it's hitting the mulch, it's hitting the gravel. It's keeping it from taking that top layer of soil and dispersing it. Nice use of all those leaves in front of the house. Natural plant growth, anything that's going to hold that soil in place to help disperse that water.
James, the leaves though, we've been told it's a fire hazard, so they shouldn't be that close to the house.
Correct. So closer to the house, gravel, rocks, something that's not going to be of that burn issue. Probably going to be your best bets close to your house. Because, yeah, anything else, even plant life around the house. I know they say, what, 10 feet away from the house? Yep.
Well, unless it jumps. Sometimes fire jumps because of the wind.
So riprap, rocks used to displace water or slow that path of water. Everything that is currently down by the spillway where the stream comes out of the lake, and we were starting to lose some of the edge of that spillway due to erosion. Building and Grounds came in, I think, last year. All the rock that they put down the side of that is helping with that erosion control. One of the driveways that's here in the neighborhood, and of course they've got the drainage pipe that goes under the driveway. The larger rocks is going to be that riprap. They've got the smaller gravel on top, just keeping it from undercutting the side of his driveway. Keeping all that dirt and everything out of the stream that goes downhill. Good use of rock going down the side of that swell next to the road. Keeping all that from washing out, slowing it down. And there's a question someone asked me before. Okay, I've got rock on the side, but there's still going to be water running underneath it. Correct. But how fast is that water now moving? Every time it hits the rocks, it's slowing it down some. As long as it's slowing it down some, you're going to be losing some of that debris in the water. Is it going to slow it all down? No. You're still going to get some wash down at the bottom of it, but how much of it are you now able to control? That's a pretty major undertaking with it, but looks good. Looks real good. And you can see they've even got the mulch up on the sides, got it along the roadside, trying to control it. And yes, I am an overeducated teacher, so everything that's up here comes from Field Manual, Georgia.gov, EPA, UGA Cooperative Extension Service. You can go online and find more information on how to help control, how to slow it down. Yes, it is a lot that you can look at, but look at what's the simple that you can do on your own property. No, you don't need a backhoe, you don't need a bobcat. It would be fun though, but you know, what is it that you have that's naturally available that you can do to help with your own property? Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do you have anybody that inspects new construction for their erosion control? Because our creek with a couple of houses going up Penny Ridge has been extremely red after all the rains lately. And we rode up there, my husband being retired DOT, said, do you have anybody community inspecting?
Anybody have an answer for that one? I'm sure we've got someone probably for the county that's supposed to roll it through too.
Yeah, we do have rules around silt fence, and it is up to compliance, right, Art? So it should be,
Yes.
It should be Chris Felt. If you believe that it is not being met, if those, call admin.
Yes.
Call, and they will
Chris
go and
Bell.
they will look at it and validate that the silt fences are properly installed.
The other thing that Lake and Wildlife has told that tree admin, suggested, we, as we're driving along and we see stuff, we bring it to their attention. So I live at the end of that. So I have brought it to their attention 2 or 3 times. We've taken pictures.
Has anything been done?
Well, one of them's doing real good, the other one has a little.
Why don't we just do silk screens at the top of the mountain where the seeds can catch it all? Before it can actually create.
They are. They're doing some of that. They're putting out straw. They're putting out.
We go to the top of the mountain and create silk screens all the way down. Have all the seeds come on the grass and they'll never go anywhere. We have to make sure you calculate every single seed. I can't do that because, gravity. But somebody can. It's probably God's job, sorry.
Next.
All right.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay.
I wanted to make a comment. We have the same issue at the end of Long Swamp Creek, right as it goes into the lake. When I moved here 1.5 years ago, I could swim. And right there is that last pool where Long Swamp Creek.
By the boat storage area?
Yeah,
around
right
that area?
by it. You can swim in that. Now you glide along mud right there. I mean, the whole thing is full. Same way when it hits the lake. I fell in the lake one time and went underwater. Now I can walk out, knee deep. It's crazy how. And if you've got to use, you go over there, you've pretty much got to use the boat launch because the mud comes up to like right there, and that's happened in 1 year. And it's not, I don't think it's coming from bent tree because bent tree cuts off, right at the top of where that dam is. And so it's got to be coming, further on up. The problem is Long Swamp goes on for miles. I mean, it is, you look at that on the map, it goes on forever. So I don't know what the answer to that is, but I mean, it's filling in. I mean, I can't imagine what's in there after last night, but it's crazy.
It's discouraging. But from the stream monitoring perspective, what we've found is that the chemistry in the water is great. There's no bacteria, the pH, all those kind of nitrates, phosphates, dissolved oxygen, it's all great. No bacteria, water's very clean from that perspective. You would expect that our macroinvertebrate counts would be excellent to correlate to the other things, but they're not. They're not terrible, but they're only in the fair to good range. And the macroinvertebrates are the critters that they get covered up by silt and they die and they get buried by the silt. So I think we have quantitative, right? We've been doing more stream monitoring to have quantitative data to say how fast is this happening, and this is why we're trying to get more expertise in this area instead of anecdotally it's happening, for more measurement of it. As far as dredging, it could be with the nature of our environment that because of gravity and that it is what it is, and what we need to do is just periodically dredge and start create another hole and then it fills in, or we have to figure out how to back it upstream and stop the problem before we spend a lot of money on dredging that's just going to happen over and over again, because dredging is not cheap to do, and it's disruptive and it's unattractive, and it may be the right answer in some cases, but we need to do it thoughtfully. So that's along with the board and the admin, and we're trying to be partners in understanding how we can address some of these things upstream with silt dam management stuff, bringing in experts, just trying to figure it out before we go spend a lot of money. I wasn't here years ago, but I understand a lot of money was spent over by the pump house, Rainbow Court area at the end of Mulligan Creek. A lot of money was spent on dredging with mediocre results. So we don't want to repeat that mistake. I wasn't here, some people may, I heard it was like $500,000 or some crazy amount of money was spent. A decade or 15 years ago at some point, more than that. Yeah, and if you go over there and look, it's like, it's come right back. So we need to figure out where it's starting, and back it upstream. So that's kind of the philosophy. Thanks, John. Eldon, you're up. I'll move the slides if it's not working. Might have just been James using there, I don't know. Wherever you went.
Does click will work?
We'll try it.
Yeah.
Good
morning.
Before we get started on feral hogs, I just want to give you a quick update on what your wildlife committee's been doing the last few months. A few months back, we talked about the goose problem. Well, you may have noticed up until this morning, there were no geese on the lake. We got rid of 24 geese that have been hanging around since February or March. They're gone, and all I can say is I can guarantee you those 24 won't be back. But Glenn told me he saw about 7 this morning. Okay, and probably the reason is we got rid of them while they were molting. They couldn't fly. They're probably flying now, and they will be coming through. So we may still have a goose problem, but we got rid of 24 of them. Yeah.
When you say get rid of, they were not destroyed, correct?
They were relocated.
Yes, they were not destroyed,
By who?
correct?
By whom, Melvin?
They were relocated
By whom?
by USDA. We used the Department of Agriculture to come and trap them, and they were relocated.
But they were not harmed.
I was guaranteed they would not be back at Bent Tree. Where they
Walmart.
took them,
I'm not sure though.
have no idea. Okay, also, we assisted public safety in taking care of a couple of injured fawns. Somebody hit a fawn on Tamarack, broke its hind legs, didn't stop, didn't report it or anything. So we assisted public safety in taking care of that. And there was one other one. Yeah, we're keeping a close eye on the deer. We're seeing a lot of deer right now, a lot of fawns. We've been doing the annual deer counts. We're going to do it again starting in November. We do November, December, and January. The last deer count results showed that we were at our target carrying capacity, which is 20 deer per square mile, in an area in North Georgia that typically has 35 to 40 deer per square mile. We set a target of 20, and that's where we are. But the fact that there were no reports of any deer collisions, problems with interference with homeowners and so forth, those factors entered into the decision made by the general manager, not by Lake and Wildlife, but by the general manager, not to do any herd management this year. I suspect, based on the number of deer we're seeing now, when we do the count, upcoming count, that ratio of deer per square mile may go up, and we may have to entertain some deer management, but we'll have to wait on those results. Okay, let's talk about feral hogs. Have they arrived in Bent Tree? Not yet. There's been some reports of somebody seeing what they thought was a wild hog in Bent Tree. Public safety has checked them out and not able to confirm it. The reason we're talking about that this morning is we want to keep it that way. Feral hogs are a problem especially in the southeast part of the United States, and it's an issue that we need to address. But anyway, we don't have a problem. Big Canoe years back had a problem. They did some trapping. They took out a whole number of feral hogs. I talked to them this week, and they haven't had any recent reports of any any wild hogs. The same thing with Young Life. I've been checking with Young Life, and they have no reports of any feral hogs on their property. So anyway, we're staying in touch with them, and it's good to know that they're not there. Are they coming? Maybe, but we want to try to prevent that from happening. Wild pigs were first introduced in this country back in the early 16th century. They were brought there for hunting. They were hunted for meat and so forth. And so they've been around for quite a while. In Georgia, there's no season for hunting feral hogs. On private property, you can hunt them year-round, day, night, and so forth. On the wildlife management areas, there is a season. So they are fair game. They're pretty plentiful, and they're considered today an invasive species, and that's why we're trying to deal with them. Yeah. Like I said, there's a lot of feral hogs, especially in the south. Anywhere from Texas to the Carolinas, there's probably over 6 million what's considered feral hogs on the loose. And the areas that are having the most problem with it is in farmland, where they come into and destroy crops and so forth. So that's where they are trying to control them the most. And places like Texas, they're trying to control them, even using helicopters to control them, to get a handle on it. And it's very difficult. You want to do the next one?
I did move it. I don't know if this is the next one.
Okay, they're very, very prolific. One, wild hogs really have no predators, especially after they reach about 20 pounds. The young piglets, the coyotes, dogs, hawks will take some of them, but after they reach about 20 pounds, they really have no predators. And one of the reasons why they're so prolific is the females can start reproducing as early as 6 months old, 4 to 6 months old. That's not the norm. Normally they're 9 to a year old when they start reproducing, but they can start reproducing as early as 6 months old. They can have up to 3 litters a year. They've got a 115-day gestation period. That's not the norm. Normally they'll have maybe 2 litters a year. And those litters can be up to 16 piglets. That's not the norm. Normally 8, 9, 10 is the norm. So that's some of the reasons why they're so prolific and hard to control. Now there's one other fact, little known fact that you may not be aware of that may explain why they're so prolific. Did you know that a pig's orgasm can last up to 30 minutes? That's a known fact. some poor parents sent their kid to school, paid good money to learn those things. So anyway, so you may want to go home and rethink your reincarnation wishes. Yeah. Anyway, that's just another reason why they may be so prolific. Okay. Trying to identify signs of wild hogs is sometimes kind of difficult. One of the ways is if you see the tracks, they may resemble deer tracks. And there is a difference. You want to put these side by side? Yeah. Here's a comparison of deer versus hog tracks. You can see the tip of the deer tracks, they're pointed. And the dew claws are pretty much in line with the outside of the hooves there. A wild hog, the tracks are more rounded, and the dew claws are on the outside of the edge of the tracks. So if you see them in your flower garden, in your yard, and you see tracks, and if you're wondering whether it's a deer or a hog, if you see tracks like this, where the footprint is kind of rounded, chances are it's not a deer, it could be a hog. And especially if there's any diggings around there, chances are it's a hog. Okay. Here's what they can do. This is just a picture of what a wild hog can do. They use their snout just to dig, and they're looking for roots, they're looking for grubs and everything. They will generally, when they're feeding, they're looking for food that's above the ground, nuts, grass. They are omnivores. They will eat anything. They'll even eat stilt grass. Yeah. They, you want to bring some in bed tree to get
I'm
rid?
thinking about goats, but maybe we'll give it some thought.
Anyway, can you imagine John Leach waking up one morning and going to see on number 9 green where a wild hog's been in there? So anyway, we had a couple of calls of people that said, you know, hey, I think there's a wild hog that was on the side of the road and has been in the area, and we've checked it out, and it was probably an armadillo or something. There were some scratchings and everything, but you'll know a wild hog digging when you see it. I mean, it's like a small bulldozer. And they're looking for grubs, they're looking for food, especially if there's no food above ground. Okay. Well, here's a friend of Luann's friend. Pork chop? That is not a feral hog. Yet, unless he stays in the wild. Yeah. Have you seen him lately?
No, we haven't seen him for a while. Because
Well,
he's staying home right now. They were going to get him a girlfriend, so he probably stayed home. He's counting his half hours.
Maybe he's living up to his name, and maybe he is pork chops now. Anyway. Yeah, feral hogs, they resemble just domesticated hogs, but they come in all sizes, shapes, and so forth. They are hard of hearing. They have they cannot hear well. They cannot see well, but they have a keen sense of smell. One of the keenest senses of smell of all animals. And most of them that if you do see any, I mean, they're generally in packs, and you'll see the adults and the young ones. They're all colors. They may look like a domesticated pig, but they're not. If they're running in the wild, I guarantee you they've been out in the wild for a while, and they're very, very difficult to control. What do you do if you think you saw a wild hog? First of all, try to identify it. If it's black and climbing a tree, chances are it's not a wild hog. If it's strutting and gobbling, it's probably not a wild hog. Or barking, it's probably not a wild hog. But if you think it may be a wild hog, please call public safety. We're trying to get as much data as we can. So call public safety, and they'll take the appropriate action. Now, you might ask me, what's that appropriate action? It depends. If it's one wild hog, they may go take it out. If it's a pack, trapping may be the answer, but I've been talking to Mike Corey, and he's prepared to do whatever needs to be done to make sure they don't take hold in bent tree. So if you see one, make a note of where, how many, what time, and call public safety before you put it out on Nextdoor or any other media. Call public safety first. Yeah, or
Take a picture.
right, take a picture if you can. Meredith?
Eldon, are they aggressive with people? Are they dangerous? I mean, I know they do property damage, but if someone sees them, should they?
They are not aggressive unless they're cornered. Yeah. If they're cornered, they will become aggressive, but they're afraid of us. And that keen sense of smell, you can't get close to them most of the time. Yeah.
How do they compare to razorback? I used to hunt markets.
Razorbacks?
Yeah.
Razorbacks they're wild hogs also. Razorbacks look a little different. They're thinner, and the Razorbacks and the Russian boars just look a little different than a domesticated pig going wild. Yeah. And I don't think we have any Razorbacks in the area. Yeah, mostly. Yeah, mostly in right, Arkansas Razorback. Any Arkansas Razorback fans here? Yeah, yeah. So anyway, if you think you've seen a wild hog, please call public safety. And we want to make sure that they don't get hold in bent tree, and that if and when we do see one, we take the appropriate action to get rid of them. And sometimes they use dogs just to chase them off the property. So hopefully we're not going to have that problem. Any questions?
They won't attack dogs then?
I'm sorry?
They won't attack dogs.
Not unless they're cornered. Yeah. Not unless they're cornered, yeah. Like I said, generally you can't get close to them because of their smell. They may not see you, they may not hear you, but the minute they'll get a whiff of you, they're gone. Yeah, which is good. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you,
I just wanted to close with a few notes. We'll be sending out a survey in email shortly. So please look for that, trying to identify topics for next year's meetings, figuring out what folks are most interested in. Also looking for help in a few areas, trying to identify passions and interests and skills that might be out there. Things like, folks who are willing to write an echo article every now and then, or that are willing to do some work on the computer in the background support of lake and wildlife. Personally, I'm interested in doing things like native plant certifications and going deeper into some topic areas, and anybody who wants to join in between our meetings with learning opportunities or field trips, or so just trying to get a better sense of who's interested in what, so that we can put folks together and make sure we utilize the talents that we have out there. We've got such great skill sets, and like Todd being willing to look at our tax filings, just things that that people can do, to support the organization. The needs are great and deep and wide, and just trying to identify those skill sets and interests, and things like what projects we support next year and where we put picnic tables perhaps. So, things, just trying to get your input. So look for that. Please participate. Tell us what you're thinking. Help shape the future of Lake and Wildlife for next year. I also wanted to say the Clemson stuff over here. We had a donation from a resident, and the proceeds will benefit, when this is sold, will benefit Lake and Wildlife. We're trying to figure out how best to sell it. Maybe doing a silent auction. I just want to put it out. I don't know how any Clemson fans in the audience. Not here. All right. Well, maybe not willing to admit it right now. I'm not sure. But so over the next couple months, so that's what that is. So if anybody was interested, and I think that's it. Okay, don't put the chairs up. Thanks for coming today. We'll see you next month, and hopefully before then as well. Take care.